Thomas Reed, a security guard at Morris & Sons storage facility in Portland, Maine. Been working here for about 8 months now, but what happened during my 4th night on the job still keeps me up at night. Let me tell you about the place first. Morris & Sons is one of those massive storage complexes on the outskirts of town. You know the type. 5 buildings, over 300 units, all connected by dimly lit corridors that seem to go on forever. The night shift is simple. Monitor 12. Security cameras do hourly walks through each building and make sure all units stay locked. 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., 5 nights a week. The pay's decent, and most nights the hardest part is staying awake. My first 3 nights were exactly what you'd expect. Walk the buildings, check the cameras, drink coffee, repeat. The cameras are old, the kind that still use those black and white monitors that make everything look like a ghost hunting show. But they work, and that's what matters. Each building has its own personality. A and B are climate-controlled, mostly used by businesses. C and D are standard units, packed with people's extra furniture and boxes. Then there's E building. E is different. Smaller units, better security, higher rates. The kind of place where people store things they don't want others to find. That's where Unit 23B was. It started on my 4th night, regular shift, nothing unusual. I was in the security office doing my 2 a.m. camera check when I noticed something odd on monitor 4. Unit 23B's door was open. Just slightly, maybe. 3 inches, but definitely open. Now, 23B belonged to this elderly woman, Mrs. Eleanor Hayes. Real particular about her unit. She'd come in every Sunday at exactly 2:30 p.m., check her things, and leave 15 minutes later. Never missed a week. Always insisted on testing the lock herself before leaving. The door being open. That wasn't possible, Aussie Blayley. I radioed it in to dispatch. No response, but that's normal at night. Dispatch is usually handling calls from our bigger facilities downtown. Following protocol, I grabbed my flashlight and keys to check it out. E building is the furthest from the office. 2 minutes down, poorly lit corridors, past rows of identical roll-up doors. My footsteps echoed off concrete walls louder than they should have been. The whole time I kept thinking about Mrs. Hayes and her weekly visits, about how she'd missed last Sunday for the first time in 2 years. When I reached Unit 23B, the door was closed. Completely closed. Lock secure, no sign it had ever been open. I checked my phone, 2:21 a.m. Just 4 minutes had passed since I saw the door open on the monitor. I pulled up our security app that lets us check camera feeds remotely. Scrolled back to 2:17 a.m. There it was. The door, definitely open, but in the footage nobody closed it. It just was open 1 second, closed the next. Back in the office, I rewound the main feed. Same thing. Door open at 2:17 a.m. Then something caught my eye. In the corner of the frame, barely visible at the edge of monitor 4's range, a hand. Not reaching for anything, not moving. Just pressed flat against the wall, fingers spread wide, like something on the other side was trying to push through. My heart was pounding as I checked the current feed. Unit 23B's door was open again. But this time there were hands on every monitor. Dozens of them. All pressed flat against walls, floors, ceilings. And slowly, finger by finger, they were starting to curl. I quit that night. Left my badge on the desk and never went back. They found Mrs. Hayes 2 weeks later, when her family finally reported her missing. She'd apparently died of natural causes in her apartment 3 months ago. But she'd been coming to her unit every Sunday until last week. The security footage proves it. Sometimes I drive past Morris & Sons during the day. Through my car window, I can see the security office where I used to sit. Someone's always in there now, watching the monitors, their hand pressed flat against the glass. The fingers are starting to curl. The Henderson family was supposed to move into 1487 Maple Drive last Tuesday. They never did. Now their moving truck sits in the driveway, packed full of boxes, doors still locked. Nobody's seen the Hendersons in 6 days. I know why. I'm their next-door neighbor, or I was supposed to be. From my kitchen window, I've been watching that house, watching how it changes. Because houses aren't supposed to change, but this one does. It started small. The first night after the Hendersons disappeared, I noticed the upstairs windows were different. Not broken or anything obvious. Just shifted. Like someone had grabbed them and moved them an inch to the left. I took a picture to convince myself I wasn't crazy. The next morning, when I compared it to the house, the windows had moved again. Just an inch. To the right this time. By Friday, other people started noticing things too. Mrs. Walsh from across the street asked if I'd seen workers at the house because she swore the front door was a different color. She was right. It had changed from red to burgundy. Except when I pulled up the real estate listing on my phone to prove it, the door in the listing had changed too. Saturday morning, the police came by. Someone had called about lights in the house. They found all the doors and windows locked. No signs of entry. But they did find something else. The interior dimensions didn't match the exterior. The living room was 2 feet wider than it should have been. They measured 3 times. That night, I couldn't sleep. The house was humming. Not like electrical humming, more like singing, but so low you feel it more than hear it. At 3 a.m., I saw someone in the Hendersons' driveway. It looked like Kevin Henderson, standing by the moving truck, trying to unlock it. I almost called out to him. Then he turned around. His face was smooth, no features, just skin. I dropped to the floor below my window and called 911. By the time they arrived, Kevin, or whatever it was gone. But the truck's back door was open, empty. All the boxes, the furniture, everything gone. The police report says the truck was never unlocked. The GPS shows it hasn't moved since Tuesday. Sunday, the house had a new window. Just appeared overnight on the 2nd floor. A big bay window that would have cost thousands to install. The real estate photos changed again. That window had always been there, apparently. Mrs. Walsh doesn't remember the house any other way. Yesterday, I caught a glimpse of movement through that new window. A family sitting down to dinner. They looked like the Hendersons, but wrong. Too many fingers. Heads tilted at impossible angles. They were eating something that moved. One of them saw me watching. It wore Mrs. Henderson's face, but not quite. Right, like someone had drawn it from a description. It waved, all 7 fingers unfurling like petals. I waved back. I don't know why. This morning my house feels different. The walls in my bedroom aren't at right angles anymore. The ceiling is higher than it was yesterday. There's a door in my kitchen that I don't remember. It leads to a room that shouldn't exist, and something inside is humming. The Hendersons' house looks normal now. Perfect even, but my house is changing. I think I understand now. The house isn't wrong. It's just hungry. And it's done with the Hendersons. Update. Someone new is moving in next door tomorrow. I should warn them. But when I try to write a note, my fingers don't bend right anymore. There are too many of them now, and they're still growing. My name is David Chen, and I'm 28 years old. This happened to me last summer when I was training for the Boston Marathon. I never believed in supernatural things. I'm a software engineer, for God's sake. I deal in logic, in ones and zeros. But what happened during those pre-dawn training runs changed my life forever, and I haven't run at night since. I should mention that I've always been a night runner. The streets are quieter, the air is cooler, and there's something peaceful about having the world to yourself. My usual route took me through Riverside Park, along the river, and back through the suburban streets of our small Massachusetts town. I'd done this route hundreds of times without incident. It started with the footsteps. When you're a runner, you become attuned to the rhythm of your own feet, your breathing, the way your shoes hit the pavement. That's why I noticed immediately when something was off. It was 4:30 a.m., pitch black except for the occasional streetlight, when I first heard it. Another set of footsteps, perfectly matching my pace. I looked behind me. Nothing. The sound stopped when I stopped, started when I started. I convinced myself it was just an echo off the buildings. Runners are good at rationalizing things, especially in the dark. The next night, the footsteps were back, but different. They were slightly out of sync with mine now, like someone trying to catch up. I ran faster. They ran faster. I slowed down. They slowed down, but always just a half step behind. I changed my route the next night, avoiding the park altogether. That's when things got worse. I was running down Cedar Street under the broken streetlight by the old Peterson house when my running app chirped. Pace matched. I nearly tripped. I never turn on pace matching. Never. I pulled out my phone, and the screen showed two runners, David Chen and David Chen, both moving at exactly 7:15 per mile. I stopped dead in my tracks. The footsteps behind me didn't. They kept coming, getting closer, still in that perfect rhythm. I turned around and saw myself running toward me with perfect form, wearing the same shoes, the same shorts, the same University of Michigan shirt I had on, but its feet weren't touching the ground. I ran home faster than I've ever run in my life. Behind me, I heard my own breathing, my own footsteps matching mine beat for beat. When I got home, my running app showed I'd set a new personal record for both of my profiles. The next few nights, I didn't run. I couldn't sleep either. I kept checking my running app, watching as David Chen logged mile after mile on my usual route, every single night at 4:30 a.m. Perfect pace. Perfect splits. Every time. After a week, I couldn't take it anymore. I had to know. I drove to my regular route at 4:30 a.m. and parked by the park entrance. Right on schedule, I saw myself run past. Perfect form. Feet not quite touching the ground. It turned and waved at me with a smile that was almost my smile, but not quite. That's when I noticed something else in my app's history. Every night, the route had been getting slightly longer. The other David was adding just a few feet more each time, slowly expanding the loop. When I mapped it out, I realized the extended route was drawing something. A spiral. And at the center of that spiral was my house. I moved away 2 days later, sold the house for way under market value, gave up on the Boston Marathon. But sometimes when I check my running app late at night, I still see it. David Chen, running that spiral, a little bigger each night in whatever town I've moved to, getting closer. The thing is, I've done the math. Based on the rate of the spiral's growth, the pattern, I know exactly when those footsteps will reach my front door, and it's tomorrow night. I'm posting this from a hotel 50 miles away, but my running app just chirped. Pace matched. The footsteps are in the hallway.